Hey guys, tonight we're stepping back in time, way back, to a world where the shimmering turquoise of the Aegean Sea wasn't just beautiful, but also your highway, your lifeline, and occasionally, your watery grave. We're going to dive into what it was really like to be a merchant in ancient Greece. Imagine the sun beating down on your brow, the scent of salt and dried fish in the air, the creak of wooden planks beneath your feet, and the constant nagging thought of whether you'd make it to the next port or even back home. It was a life of incredible risk and, for some, incredible reward. Let's be honest, most of us probably wouldn't last a week. The lack of air conditioning alone would be a deal breaker for me. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're listening, drop a comment with your location and what time it is there. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself a young Greek, standing on the docks of Piraeus, the bustling port of Athens, circa 400 BCE. The air is thick with the cries of porters, the bleating of livestock, and the guttural shouts of sailors preparing their vessels. You're not just an observer, you are this person. You've probably spent your early years in the countryside, toiling in the fields, or perhaps in a dusty workshop, learning a craft. But something within you, a spark of ambition, a thirst for something more than the mundane, has drawn you to the sea. You've heard the tales, whispers of fortunes made, of exotic goods from distant lands, and of the freedom that comes with charting your own course. This isn't a story of glorious battles or philosophical debates. This is the gritty reality of commerce, the lifeblood of an empire. Your journey, unlike that of the scions of wealthy Athenian families, isn't beginning with a grand inheritance or a well-established family business. No, your capital is meager, perhaps a small inheritance, a few silver coins painstakingly saved, or even a loan from a more established merchant secured by your future labor. This isn't venture capital with friendly terms. This is a high-stakes gamble where your very survival is on the line. You're looking at the triremes, the warships that guard the seas, and the more common merchant vessels, the whole Cadies or round ships, with their broad hulls and single mast, designed for cargo, not speed. They look sturdy, but you know the Aegean can turn from a placid mirror to a raging beast in a matter of hours. Your first venture is likely to be a small one. Perhaps you've managed to acquire a few amphorae of Athenian olive oil, renowned throughout the Greek world for its quality, or maybe some Attic pottery, the intricate black figure or red figure vases coveted by the elite. You've heard whispers that there's good money to be made selling these in the burgeoning markets of the Black Sea, or perhaps in the burgeoning colonies of Magna Graecia, modern-day Italy. But getting there, that's the real challenge. You negotiate with a ship captain, a gruff, sun-baked man with eyes that have seen too many storms and too much treachery. He quotes you a price for passage and cargo space, usually a percentage of the value of your goods, or a fixed rate per amphora. There's no insurance in the modern sense. If your ship sinks, your livelihood, your entire future, sinks with it. This isn't merely a financial transaction, it's a pact with fate. You might offer a small bribe, a gesture of goodwill, or simply rely on your burgeoning reputation as an earnest young man. Historians still debate the precise mechanisms of early maritime insurance in ancient Greece, with some suggesting informal community-based risk-sharing played a more significant role than formal contracts. The departure itself is an event. You're not just loading your goods, you're joining a community. The ship is a microcosm of Greek society, a blend of free citizens, medics resident foreigners, and perhaps even a few slaves toiling in the hold. You share cramped quarters, the smell of unwashed bodies and stale food, and the constant rocking of the waves. Sleep comes in fits and starts, disturbed by the creaking of the ship's timbers, the murmur of the crew, and the occasional splash of a rogue wave over the deck. There's no privacy, no personal space. You learn to live cheek by jowl, to tolerate the quirks of your fellow travelers, and to offer a helping hand when needed, knowing that one day you might need one yourself. The journey itself is a test of endurance. There are no accurate charts, no GPS. Navigation relies on the stars, the sun, and the accumulated knowledge of generations of sailors. You hug the coast when possible, seeking familiar landmarks, but sometimes, to cut time or avoid pirates, you must venture into the open sea. The wind is your friend, but also your master. A favorable breeze can carry you swiftly to your destination, but a sudden storm can turn your voyage into a desperate struggle for survival. You're constantly scanning the horizon, not just for land, but for the telltale signs of approaching squalls. A dark cloud on the horizon isn't just a change in weather, it's a potential disaster. You learn to read the sky, to understand the subtle shifts in the wind, to feel the mood of the sea. You witness firsthand the power of Poseidon, the god of the sea, and offer fervent prayers and libations to appease him. A small offering of wine poured over the bow, a quick prayer to the gods for safe passage. These aren't mere rituals. They are heartfelt pleas from a soul adrift in a vast, indifferent ocean. One time, you remember a storm so fierce, the waves seemed to swallow the entire sky. The ship was tossed like a toy, the mast creaking ominously, the crew frantically working to keep her afloat. You clung to a rope, convinced your short career was over, only to emerge, soaking wet and terrified, but alive. As the dawn broke to reveal a deceptively calm sea, it was a stark reminder of your vulnerability, a moment that would forever humble you. Piracy is a constant, terrifying threat. These aren't romantic swashbucklers. They are ruthless raiders who will plunder your goods, enslave you, or worse. You hear chilling tales of merchant ships ambushed, their crews slaughtered, their cargo disappearing into the dark depths of the sea. The ship you're on might carry a small armed guard, but their numbers are often few, their weapons rudimentary. Your best defense is often speed, evasive maneuvers, or the luck of simply not being in the wrong place at the wrong time. You learn to recognize the silhouettes of suspicious vessels, the subtle shifts in their course, and the telltale signs of a potential ambush. It's a game of cat and mouse played on the vast, unforgiving expanse of the sea. You pull into a small, unfamiliar port, perhaps a fledgling colony on the coast of Asia Minor. The harbor is less developed than Piraeus, a jumble of smaller boats, makeshift docks, and a few dusty warehouses. The local language might be a dialect of Greek, or perhaps something entirely foreign. Here, your skills as a negotiator truly come into play. You don't have the luxury of established trading houses or sophisticated banking systems. It's you, your goods, and your ability to haggle. You need to assess the local demand, understand the value of your commodities in this new market, and find a buyer who won't fleece you. You learn to read faces, to discern sincerity from deception. You might encounter merchants from other Greek city-states, or even Phoenicians, Egyptians, or Etruscans, each with their own customs and trading practices. The bargaining can be long and drawn out, involving endless cups of wine, elaborate compliments, and subtle threats. You might be offered local goods in exchange, grain, timber, raw materials, which you then have to assess for their potential value back in Athens. It's a constant calculation, a mental ledger of risk and profit. Sometimes you make a good deal, selling your olive oil for a handsome profit and acquiring a rare textile that you know will fetch a high price back home. Other times you're forced to sell at a loss, just to cover your costs and move on. The lodgings in these foreign ports are rarely luxurious. You might sleep in a communal dormitory, on a cot in a noisy tavern, or even on the deck of your ship under the stars. The food is simple, often unfamiliar, and sometimes unappetizing. You learn to adapt, to be resilient, to make do with what's available. You become resourceful, capable of fixing a broken rope, patching a torn sail, or even bartering for a fresh meal with a few leftover figs. A curious fact often overlooked is the pervasive use of lead in ancient Greek society, including in their cooking and storage vessels, which likely contributed to various health issues among the population, including merchants who were constantly consuming unfamiliar provisions. Perhaps that's why so many of them aged so quickly. The journey back is a mirror image of the outward voyage, but with new cargo and new anxieties, you're now responsible for a different set of goods. Perhaps a shipment of grain from the Black Sea, vital for feeding the burgeoning population of Athens, or a consignment of timber from Macedon, essential for shipbuilding. The profit margins might be tighter, the risks just as high. You might encounter the same perils, storms, pirates, unscrupulous officials, but you're also a little wiser, a little more seasoned. You've learned lessons, sometimes painful ones, about the unpredictable nature of trade and the even more unpredictable nature of human beings. When you finally see the Acropolis rising in the distance, a beacon of home, a wave of relief washes over you. You've survived, you've delivered your cargo, you've, hopefully, made a profit. The customs officials will inspect your goods, collect their tariffs, and then you're free to distribute your wares to the various markets and workshops of Athens. You might sell directly to consumers in the bustling agora, or to other merchants who specialize in specific commodities. The cycle then begins anew, a relentless rhythm of buying, selling, and sailing. You are a cog in the vast, intricate machine of ancient Greek commerce, a vital link in the chain that connected disparate parts of the Mediterranean world. And so, you, the fledgling merchant, begin to build your reputation. Word travels quickly in these close-knit communities. Are you honest? Are you reliable? Do you pay your debts? Do you deliver on your promises? Your good name is your most valuable asset, more precious than any cargo. A single act of dishonesty can ruin you, leaving you ostracized and unable to secure future loans or trading partners. Conversely, a reputation for integrity can open doors, lead to new opportunities, and secure your place in the competitive world of ancient Greek trade. You are not just selling goods, you are selling yourself. Chuangdu sotu wedasara sa wondered. Jangcho tiep du chong tin. Tom le chi noi dong chuyen viet bang tiang jua chiu kau kong le viet tiang Vietnam kika fan mo jau ka strong chong wan. Doto betri pat dved. You've survived your first few voyages, perhaps even turned a small profit. And now you stand on the cusp of something more substantial. The initial fear of the open sea has receded, replaced by a cautious respect. You're no longer a wide-eyed novice. You're becoming a Nekaros, a merchant, a man who understands the delicate balance between risk and reward. This isn't just about moving goods from point A to point B. It's about mastering the art of the deal, a dance as old as commerce itself. Played out in the bustling agorae and quiet backrooms of the ancient world, imagine yourself in the heart of the Athenian agora, not the tranquil ruins you might envision today, but a cacophony of sound, scent, and spectacle. The air hums with conversation, the clatter of pottery, the insistent calls of vendors. Sunlight glints off bronze wares, and the rich aroma of spices mingles with the earthy scent of grain and the salty tang of dried fish. You navigate through crowds of citizens, slaves, and foreigners, each with their own agenda, their own desires. This is where you hone your craft, where you learn to read not just ledgers, but people. Your first lesson, often learned the hard way, is the value of information. There are no Bloomberg terminals or real-time market updates. You rely on gossip, on whispers overheard in taverns, on the observations of other returning merchants. Is there a surplus of grain in Rhodes? Has a new source of timber been discovered in Macedon? Is there a sudden demand for luxury textiles in the burgeoning city of Syracuse? These snippets of information, often contradictory, are your most valuable currency. You learn to cultivate contacts, to offer a drink here, a favor there, in exchange for insights. This is ancient intelligence gathering, and your ability to discern fact from rumor can make or break a deal. Then comes the negotiation itself. This isn't a quick handshake and a fixed price. Oh no, this is a theatrical performance, a test of wills, a delicate balance of flattery, feigned indifference, and strategic concessions. You might begin by effusively praising the quality of your goods, describing their exotic origins, the craftsmanship involved, or the sheer rarity of the commodity. Look at this olive oil, you might exclaim, gesturing to an amphora. Pressed from the finest olives, blessed by Athena herself, its golden hue a testament to the sun-drenched hills of Attica. Your potential buyer, meanwhile, will likely feign disinterest, finding fault, pointing out minor imperfections, or lamenting the current market glut. Olive oil. Ah, yes, we have barrels of it. And this, my friend, seems a trifle cloudy. You counter, perhaps with a slight chuckle, acknowledging their perceived wisdom, then subtly highlighting a unique selling point. Perhaps the oil is from a particularly good harvest, or it's packaged in uniquely crafted amphorae. The price will be tossed back and forth. A slow, deliberate dance. You might start high, knowing you'll have to come down. They'll start low, hoping to exploit your perceived eagerness. You'll pretend to walk away. They'll call you back. It's all part of the game. The Roman playwright Plautus, though writing later, perfectly captured this timeless theatricality of ancient commerce in his comedies, where haggling was often as much about entertainment as it was about economics. Personal charm is just as crucial as the quality of your goods. People prefer to deal with someone they like, someone they trust. You learn to gauge your audience. Are they a gruff Spartan who appreciates directness? A sophisticated Athenian who responds to wit and eloquence? A wary Phoenician who values a straightforward, no-nonsense approach? You adapt your demeanor, your language, even your posture. A well-placed compliment, a shared laugh, a genuine interest in their well-being. These small gestures can often seal a deal where logic alone might fail. You also learn when to hold your ground. There's a fine line between being accommodating and being taken for a fool. Sometimes, walking away is the strongest negotiation tactic of all. Beyond the grand pronouncements, there are the practicalities. Ancient Greek commerce relied heavily on barter. While coinage existed, especially the famous Athenian owls, large transactions often involved the exchange of goods for other goods. You might trade a shipment of grain for a quantity of silver, or a unique dye for a consignment of wine. This required you to not only know the value of your own wares, but also to accurately assess the value and demand for the goods you were offered in exchange. It was a constant mental calculus, a living balance sheet played out in real time. Weights and measures were another critical and sometimes contentious aspect of daily trade. There were official standards, but local variations and outright fraud were common. You learn to inspect the scales, to check the volume of amphorae, to ensure you're getting what you pay for, and giving what you promise. You develop a keen eye for detail, a skepticism born of experience. You might carry your own small weights to verify a transaction, or have a trusted assistant who specializes in such matters. This vigilance isn't just about protecting your profit, it's about safeguarding your reputation. Being known as someone who uses fair measures is a significant advantage. You also become adept at understanding credit and debt. Unlike modern banking, there were no complex credit scores. Loans were often based on personal trust and collateral, your ship, your cargo, even your future labor. You might borrow money from a wealthy citizen, or a trapezites, an early form of banker. These loans often came with high interest rates, especially for maritime ventures, reflecting the inherent risks. Failure to repay could mean ruin, even enslavement. This precarious financial landscape meant every deal, every negotiation, carried an added weight. You weren't just making a profit, you were ensuring your solvency, your freedom. Consider the role of public opinion. In a society as interconnected as ancient Greece, rumors spread like wildfire. A merchant known for cheating or for delivering shoddy goods would quickly find his business drying up. Conversely, one known for honesty and fair dealing would attract repeat customers and preferential treatment. You participate in the daily life of the Agora, exchanging pleasantries, sharing news, and subtly reinforcing your image as a trustworthy individual. You might even find yourself mediating disputes between other vendors, a testament to your growing wisdom and respect. And let's not forget the occasional humorous interlude. One time, you're haggling over a shipment of fine wool from Miletus, trying to convince a particularly stubborn weaver that your price is fair. He's complaining about the quality, about the threads being uneven, about the moths that might infest it. You lean in with a conspiratorial whisper. My friend, this wool is so fine. It makes the muses themselves jealous. And as for moths, why, even they would be too embarrassed to be seen near such exquisite fabric. He stared at you for a long moment. Then a slow grin spread across his face, and the deal was struck. Sometimes a touch of levity, a well-placed joke, can cut through the tension and open the door to agreement. It's a bit like modern sales, isn't it? Except without the PowerPoints, you also learn to identify and cater to niche markets. While grain and olive oil were staples, there was always demand for the unique, the luxurious, the exotic. Perhaps you specialize in rare pigments from Egypt, or delicate amber from the distant Baltic. Maybe it's a specific type of incense, or a particularly potent wine. Discovering these niches, understanding the limited supply and high demand, allows you to command higher prices and build a reputation as a purveyor of exceptional goods. This requires a keen eye, a willingness to travel further, and a deeper understanding of diverse cultures and their desires. The legal framework, though not as formalized as today, also played a significant role. Contracts, often oral but sometimes written on papyrus or clay tablets, were enforced by local courts. Disputes, though ideally settled through negotiation, could escalate to legal proceedings. This meant you needed a basic understanding of customary law, the rights and obligations of merchants, and the procedures for dispute resolution. Historians continue to debate the extent to which formal legal codes versus informal social pressures governed commercial interactions in various Greek city-states, especially in the early Archaic period. A wise merchant knew when to stand his ground legally and when to compromise to avoid costly and time-consuming litigation. Ultimately, the art of the deal in ancient Greece was a holistic endeavor. It encompassed economic acumen, social intelligence, a keen understanding of human psychology, and an unwavering commitment to your reputation. It wasn't just about making money, it was about building relationships, navigating complex social hierarchies, and adapting to ever-changing circumstances. You become a master of persuasion, a reader of subtle cues, a strategist in a world where every transaction was a miniature battle, and every successful deal a victory. And as the sun sets over the agora, casting long shadows across the stalls, you feel a quiet satisfaction. You've not only moved goods, you've moved people, and in doing so, moved closer to securing your place in this vibrant, challenging world. You've mastered the intricacies of negotiation, navigating the bustling agori with a shrewd eye and a persuasive tongue. But what exactly are you buying and selling? What cargo and commodities fuel the engine of ancient Greek commerce, enabling your burgeoning career as a merchant? It's far more diverse and fascinating than mere grain and olive oil, though those are certainly crucial staples. Imagine your vessel, a sturdy hulkas, bobbing gently in the harbor. Its hold isn't just a cavernous space, it's a meticulously packed puzzle of amphorae, bales, crates, and bundles, each containing goods essential to the ancient world. You, as the merchant, are a vital link in a complex supply chain, connecting producers with consumers across a vast maritime network. Let's start with the absolute necessities. Grain, especially wheat and barley, was the lifeblood of the Greek city-states. Many poleis, like Athens, could not produce enough food to feed their burgeoning populations, making them heavily reliant on imports. You'd find yourself journeying to the fertile plains of the Black Sea, particularly from regions like the Crimean Peninsula or Egypt, to secure massive shipments. Imagine the sheer volume, thousands of bushels, each one a testament to the farmer's toil and the merchant's daring. A successful grain shipment could mean the difference between a city thriving and its people facing starvation. The smell of stored grain, a mix of dust and earthy sweetness, would cling to your clothes for weeks after unloading. Then there's olive oil, the liquid gold of the Mediterranean. It wasn't just for cooking, it was used for lighting, as a cosmetic, for bathing, and even in religious rituals. Athenian olive oil, particularly, was highly prized for its quality. You might be exporting this precious commodity, carefully sealed in distinctive amphorae, to distant lands that lacked the perfect climate for olive cultivation. The journey with olive oil was always a nerve-wracking one. A leak in the hold could ruin a significant portion of your cargo and your profit. You'd regularly inspect the amphorae, listening for the telltale trickle, hoping your carefully applied resin seals would hold. Wine followed closely behind. Every Greek citizen, from philosopher to farmer, enjoyed wine. Different regions produced different varieties. Chian wine, Lesbian wine, Thasian wine, each with its own distinct flavor and reputation. You might transport these in large, bulbous amphorae, often stamped with the origin to ensure authenticity. Imagine the delicate balance required to ensure these fragile vessels didn't shatter during a rough crossing, or that the wine didn't turn sour. A particularly rough journey could mean a hold full of expensive vinegar instead of valuable wine. A crushing blow to your profit margins. Beyond food and drink, pottery was a major export, especially from Athens and Corinth. The beautiful red figure and black figure vases, depicting myths, daily life, and heroic deeds, were functional art used for storing wine and oil, but also admired for their aesthetic appeal. You'd carefully pack these fragile pieces with straw or cloth, praying they'd arrive unbroken. The sight of a perfectly preserved crater being unloaded at a distant port, ready to adorn a wealthy citizen's home, was always satisfying. It was a tangible piece of Greek culture, transported across the seas. But ancient trade wasn't just about the staples. It was about the exotic, the luxurious, and the rare. You might seek out timber from the dense forests of Macedon or Thrace, essential for shipbuilding and construction in wood-scarce regions like Attica. This wasn't easy cargo. Enormous logs had to be floated down rivers and then expertly loaded onto ships. A slow and arduous process that tested the strength of both men and vessels. Metals were incredibly valuable. You'd deal in bronze, essential for tools, weapons, and statues, often sourced from mines in Cyprus or Etruria. Iron, though less precious, was crucial for agricultural implements and everyday tools. And then there was silver, famously from the mines of Laurium near Athens, which formed the basis of their strong currency. The owls. You might be transporting raw ore or finished ingots, always keenly aware of the immense value you held in your hands, and the constant threat of pirates. Slaves were a tragic but undeniable commodity in the ancient world. They were acquired through warfare, piracy, or debt, and transported across the Mediterranean to be sold in major slave markets. This was a dark facet of the trade, but one that many merchants were involved in. You might find yourself on a ship carrying human cargo, a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the time. Consider also the more specialized goods. Textiles, particularly fine wools from Miletus or dyed cloths from Phoenicia, were highly sought after. You'd marvel at the vibrant colors, achieved through laborious dyeing processes using natural pigments. Imagine the rich purple of Tyrian dye, extracted from sea snails, a color so rare and expensive it was reserved for royalty and the very wealthy. Transporting these delicate fabrics meant protecting them from salt spray, damp, and the ever-present risk of rats. Then there are the raw materials for craftsmanship. Marble, famously from Paros or Naxos, was transported in huge blocks to sculptors and architects across the Greek world. Imagine the immense effort involved in quarrying these blocks, loading them onto specially designed ships, and then unloading them. It was a monumental undertaking for monumental art. And what about the truly exotic spices from the east, arriving via overland routes to ports in Asia Minor, then picked up by Greek merchants? Cinnamon, pepper, frankincense. These were not just for flavoring food, they were used in perfumes, medicines, and religious ceremonies. You'd delight in the pungent, intoxicating aromas that emanated from their sealed containers. Exotic animals, though rare, were also traded for entertainment or as status symbols for the elite. One time, you remember hearing whispers of a merchant who managed to transport a small, brightly colored parrot from Egypt, which he later sold for a princely sum. Historians still debate the specific routes and primary commodities exchanged between Greece and regions as distant as India, with evidence suggesting a complex network of intermediaries rather than direct voyages. Another crucial, though less tangible, commodity was knowledge and ideas. While not something you could physically load onto your ship, the constant movement of people, merchants, sailors, scholars, artisans, meant that innovations in shipbuilding, philosophical concepts, artistic styles, and even agricultural techniques spread rapidly across the Mediterranean. You, as a merchant, were an unwitting conduit for this intellectual exchange, picking up new ideas and practices in foreign ports and bringing them back to your homeland. Finally, there are the more mundane but equally vital goods tools of all kinds, from agricultural implements to artisans' tools. Salt, essential for food preservation and flavoring, medicinal herbs and incense for religious ceremonies, even cosmetics and perfumes for daily life. Every item, no matter how small, played a role in the intricate web of ancient Greek commerce. You learn to be an expert in quality control. You can tell good grain from bad, pure olive oil from adulterated, and genuine pottery from cheap imitations. Your reputation depends on it. You become a connoisseur of goods, a walking encyclopedia of commodities, their origins, their values, and their potential markets. The cargo in your ship's hold isn't just inanimate objects, it represents the sweat of farmers, the skill of artisans, the daring of miners, and the relentless demand of a thriving civilization. And as you gaze at the tightly packed hold of your ship, you feel a profound connection to the vast, interconnected world you help to sustain. It's heavy, dusty work, but the thought of the profit and the thrill of discovery keeps you going. You've got your cargo, you've honed your haggling skills, but the real adventure and the real peril lies in the beyond the agora travel and trade routes. This wasn't a world of smooth highways and predictable schedules. This was a realm of vast distances, unreliable maps, and constant danger. Your livelihood, indeed your very life, depended on navigating these ancient pathways. Imagine setting sail from Piraeus, leaving the familiar sight of the Acropolis behind. The sea, as you've learned, is your primary highway, unlike overland travel, which was slow, arduous, and fraught with bandits. The sea offered the fastest and most efficient way to transport bulk goods, but fast in ancient terms is relative. Your average holkas might manage a few knots, maybe 4 or 5 miles per hour on a good day with a favorable wind. A journey from Athens to Syracuse in Sicily, roughly 500 miles on, could take anywhere from 5 days to several weeks, depending on the weather and the whim of the gods. Your primary navigation tools are simple: the sun by day, the stars by night, and the accumulated knowledge of the sea passed down through generations. You hug the coastline when possible, using prominent landmarks, a distinctive mountain, a sacred grove, a temple on a cliff, as your guides. This method, known as coastal navigation, kept you in sight of land, offering a measure of security and potential refuge in case of a sudden storm. You'd learn the names of every cove, every promontory, every treacherous reef. However, true merchants couldn't always stick to the coast. To reach distant markets like Egypt, the Black Sea, or the Western Mediterranean, you'd often have to venture into the open sea, relying solely on celestial navigation. Polaris, the North Star, would be your constant companion, guiding you through the darkness. You'd learn to recognize constellations, to gauge your latitude by their position in the sky. This deep sea sailing was more risky, placing you at the mercy of the elements with no immediate safe harbor. It was here that storms could truly become terrifying, with no land in sight for days, sometimes weeks. You'd stand on deck, drenched by spray, peering into the swirling gray, hoping for a break in the clouds to catch a glimpse of a guiding star. The winds were your engine. The Mediterranean has distinct wind patterns and a skilled captain. Often working closely with you, the merchant would know how to harness them. The Etesian winds in summer, blowing steadily from the north, were a blessing for journeys south and east. But returning north against them could be a slow, torturous process, often requiring long detours or waiting in port for a change in direction. You'd spend days, sometimes weeks, marooned in a dusty harbor, watching your profits dwindle, while waiting for a favorable breeze. Boredom could be as much a challenge as the storms, punctuated by gambling, storytelling, and the consumption of local wine. Piracy, as mentioned before, was an ever-present specter. The narrow straits and sheltered coves of the Aegean and beyond were perfect ambush points. Cilician pirates, Illyrian raiders, and even renegade Greek sailors preyed on merchant ships. Your best defense was often to sail in convoy, joining a small fleet of other merchant vessels, but even this offered no guarantee. Sometimes, the threat came from within. Mutiny, though rare, was a terrifying possibility if a desperate crew decided the cargo was more valuable than their loyalty. You'd always sleep with one eye open, your small dagger close at hand. Archaeological evidence, like sunken shipwrecks laden with goods, often tells a grim tale of sudden attacks, with cargo scattered and hulls bearing the marks of violence, beyond the sea, though less common for bulk goods. Overland routes played a vital role, especially for high-value items that couldn't be exposed to the elements or needed to reach inland markets. Imagine loading precious dyes or delicate spices onto the backs of mules or donkeys, forming a small caravan. These journeys were agonizingly slow, perhaps only 10 to 15 miles a day over rugged terrain. The paths were often little more than goat trails, winding through mountains, across rivers, and through dense forests. Banditry was a constant menace on land. Unlike the open sea, where you might see an approaching pirate ship from a distance, bandits could spring from ambush points along the narrow mountain passes. You'd hire armed guards, often seasoned mercenaries, to protect your valuable cargo. These were gruff, dangerous men whose loyalty was often bought and maintained with a steady wage and the promise of a share of any spoil should they successfully repel an attack. You learned to trust them, but never completely. Supply stops were crucial for both sea and land journeys. Along the coast, you'd pull into small, bustling ports, often independent city-states or colonies, to replenish fresh water, food, and perhaps make minor repairs to your vessel. These stops were opportunities to gather intelligence, assess local market prices, and sometimes to offload or acquire small quantities of goods to maximize your profit. On land, these stops might be at fortified inns or small villages, offering rudimentary shelter and provisions. You'd mingle with other travelers, soldiers, pilgrims, messengers, exchanging news and stories. Each encounter a window into a different facet of the Greek world. The challenges were immense. Disease was rampant. Without modern sanitation or medicine, a simple fever could become deadly. You learned to rely on traditional remedies, on the kindness of strangers, and on sheer good fortune. Accidents were common: a fall on a slippery deck, a snapped rope, a sprained ankle on a rocky trail. Any of these could put you out of commission, leaving your cargo vulnerable and your livelihood threatened. Despite the hardships, there was an undeniable allure to this life of constant motion. You saw lands few others ever would. You tasted exotic foods, heard strange languages, and witnessed customs that both fascinated and perplexed you. You met people from every corner of the Greek world and beyond: Stoic Spartans, philosophical Athenians, artistic Corinthians, rugged Macedonians, shrewd Phoenicians, enigmatic Egyptians. Each encounter broadened your perspective, deepened your understanding of the vast tapestry of human existence. You learned that while customs might differ, the fundamental human desires for sustenance, comfort, and perhaps a little luxury were universal. The concept of a trade route in ancient Greece wasn't a static line on a map, but a dynamic, ever-shifting network influenced by political alliances, seasonal winds, pirate activity, and market demand. New colonies would spring up, creating new destinations. Wars would erupt, closing off old routes and forcing merchants to find alternative pathways. You, as a merchant, had to be adaptable, constantly reevaluating your strategies and willing to pivot at a moment's notice. Some scholars argue that the flexibility and adaptability of Greek merchants were key factors in the longevity and resilience of their commercial networks, allowing them to circumvent political instability and maintain economic flow. Returning home, you are not just a merchant with goods, you are a storyteller. You bring back tales of distant lands, of grand temples and strange customs, of fierce storms and narrow escapes. You are a conduit for information, for culture, for connection. Your experiences transcend mere profit and loss. They shape you into a truly cosmopolitan individual, a citizen of the wider Mediterranean world. The worn planks of your ship, the dust on your boots, the salt in your hair. These are the badges of your intrepid journeys, the silent witnesses to a life lived on the very edge of the known world. And as you step ashore, you're already planning your next voyage. The call of the open road, or rather the open sea, too strong to resist. You've faced the open sea, navigated treacherous routes, and mastered the art of the deal. Yet even the most cunning merchant or the most experienced sailor could not escape the intricate web of navigating legal labyrinths. In ancient Greece, like commerce wasn't just about handshake deals and whispered promises. It was increasingly underpinned by a surprisingly sophisticated, if sometimes convoluted, system of laws and customs designed to regulate trade and resolve inevitable disputes. Imagine you've arrived in a bustling port like Syracuse, a wealthy Greek colony in Sicily. Your cargo of Athenian olive oil is highly anticipated. But upon inspection, the local buyer claims a significant portion of your amphorae are leaking, or that the oil has gone rancid. In a modern context, you'd consult a written contract and perhaps call your lawyer. In ancient Greece, the process was far more personal, yet no less binding. Your first line of defense would be negotiation. You'd try to reason with the buyer, perhaps offering a small discount or a replacement for the damaged goods if feasible. Your reputation, as you well know, is paramount. Accusations of shoddy goods could cripple your future prospects. However, if an agreement couldn't be reached, you'd find yourself drawn into the formal legal system of the city-state. Each polis had its own laws, though many shared common principles. In Athens, for example, cases involving merchants and maritime trade, known as dikai emporkai commercial lawsuits, were often handled by special courts or magistrates. You wouldn't find a dedicated courthouse as we know it, but rather specific public spaces or administrative buildings where legal proceedings took place. The legal system was driven by citizens, often laymen acting as jurors or judges rather than professional lawyers. When a dispute arose, you, the plaintiff, would first present your case to a magistrate. This magistrate would then assess the validity of your claim and, if deemed legitimate, allow the case to proceed. There were no detailed police investigations or forensics. It was primarily a battle of words and evidence presented by the involved parties. You'd need witnesses, perhaps your crew members who could attest to the condition of the cargo upon loading, or other merchants who saw the goods in transit. You might present written evidence, such as loan contracts, singrify, or cargo manifest foros, though these were often less detailed than modern documents. Archaeological discoveries of lead tablets with inscribed contracts offer fascinating, albeit rare, glimpses into the written agreements that sometimes supplemented verbal oaths. The process could be painfully slow. Justice wasn't swift. Cases could drag on for days, weeks, and or even months, especially if the defendant was uncooperative or if witnesses were difficult to gather. This delay itself was a significant cost to you, tying up your capital, preventing you from undertaking new voyages, and forcing you to pay for lodgings and provisions in a foreign city. Sometimes, the goal of a richer, more powerful opponent wasn't necessarily to win the case outright, but to wear you down through attrition, forcing you to abandon your claim due to financial exhaustion. You wouldn't have a lawyer in the modern sense. Instead, you would likely present your own case, delivering a speech to a jury, often composed of hundreds of citizens, or if you lacked oratorical skills, you might hire a professional speechwriter logographos to compose a compelling argument for you. This speech would be memorized and delivered by you. It wasn't just about legal facts, it was about rhetoric, about appealing to the jury's sense of justice, patriotism, and even their emotions. You'd emphasize your honesty, your hard work, the vital role of merchants in the city's economy, and the egregious nature of your opponent's alleged wrongdoing. Cross-examination was a direct, often brutal affair. Your opponent, or their chosen orator, would question you directly, attempting to expose inconsistencies in your story, undermine your credibility, or portray you as deceitful. You had to be quick-witted, composed, and able to defend your integrity under intense public scrutiny. It was a stressful, intimidating experience, with your entire reputation, and often your fortune, hanging in the balance. Punishments for commercial fraud or breach of contract could be severe. Depending on the nature of the offense and the city-state, you could face heavy fines, confiscation of goods, public shaming, or even loss of citizen rights if you were found guilty of particularly heinous fraud. For debt, imprisonment wasn't common, but debtors could be forced into servitude until their obligations were met. This looming threat instilled a strong incentive for merchants to honor their agreements and conduct their business ethically. One peculiar aspect of ancient Greek legal thought was the emphasis on dike justice and nomos law, custom. Disputes were often viewed not just as individual grievances, but as threats to the social order. Merchants who upheld their contracts contributed to the stability and prosperity of the city, while those who cheated undermined it. This broader social context often influenced how cases were perceived and judged. You also had to contend with the complexities of international law, or rather, the lack thereof. There wasn't a universal legal framework governing trade between different poleis. Treaties, known as symmachii or isopolitei, sometimes included clauses for legal reciprocity, allowing citizens of one state to seek justice in the courts of another. However, these were not universal. Often, you relied on the hospitality laws Xenia and the good faith of local magistrates. If you found yourself in a city without such agreements, your ability to seek justice was greatly diminished, making the choice of trading partners and destinations a critical legal consideration. Scholars continue to debate the extent to which Greek international law evolved from informal agreements and religious oaths to more formalized treaties. Beyond formal legal battles, there were also various forms of arbitration. Merchants often preferred to settle disputes out of court, through mediators or respected elders within the merchant community. These informal resolutions were faster, cheaper, and less damaging to one's public image. You'd learn to pick your battles, understanding that a lengthy court case, even if you won, might cost you more in time and lost opportunities than a negotiated settlement. Sometimes, the legal labyrinth wasn't about disputes but about regulations. Ports would have officials checking weights and measures, ensuring adherence to tariffs, and inspecting goods for quality. You learn to navigate this bureaucratic side of trade, building relationships with officials, understanding the local taxes, and ensuring your cargo met the required standards. A friendly word, a small gift, not a bribe. Of course, just a gesture of goodwill, could smooth the path through customs. Consider the practical joke of it all. You spend months at sea, battling storms and pirates, only to arrive in port and get tangled in a legal battle over a few cracked amphorae. It's enough to make you want to throw your hands up and become a simple farmer. But then you remember the thrill of the deal, the allure of profit, and the satisfaction of overcoming obstacles, legal or otherwise. And so you delve into the intricacies of ancient Greek law, not out of passion for jurisprudence, but out of necessity, transforming yourself not just into a merchant, but into a shrewd, resilient player in the legal games of the ancient world. You learn to speak not just the language of commerce, but also the persuasive, often intimidating, language of the courts. You've mastered the waves, the markets, and even the courtroom. But your journey as an ancient Greek merchant isn't just about ships and silver. It's profoundly woven into the social fabric of commerce. How did you, a bustling entrepreneur, fit into a society that often extolled the virtues of philosophy, warfare, and public service above the pursuit of profit? The answer is complex, a fascinating blend of respect, suspicion, and undeniable necessity. Imagine an Athenian citizen, a philosopher perhaps, walking through the agora. He might view you, the merchant, with a mixture of disdain and dependence. On one hand, the intellectual elite often looked down upon manual labor and the pursuit of wealth for its own sake. The ideal citizen, particularly in Athens, was a land-owning male who participated actively in politics, served in the military, and engaged in philosophical debate. Commercial activities, especially those involving travel and direct engagement with money, were sometimes seen as less noble, even grubby. Plato, for instance, in his Ideal Republic, placed merchants lower on the social scale than farmers or artisans. Yet this disdain was often contradicted by reality. Without you, the merchant, cities like Athens would starve. They relied heavily on imported grain, timber, and metals. You were the lifeblood of their economy, the artery through which essential goods flowed. This created an intriguing tension. You might not be at the top of the social hierarchy, but you were undeniably indispensable. Your social standing often depended on your origin. If you were a native-born Athenian citizen, your commercial activities, while perhaps not glorified, were tolerated and even necessary. You could own land, participate in the assembly, and contribute to the civic life of the city. However, many prominent merchants were metics, resident foreigners who lived and worked in Athens but lacked full citizenship. These individuals, often from other Greek city-states or even further afield like Phoenicia, were crucial to the Athenian economy. They paid special taxes metoikion and could not own land without special permission. But they often amassed considerable wealth and influence through their mercantile ventures. You might be one of these metics, an outsider who, through sheer diligence and shrewdness, built a comfortable life in a foreign land. Consider your daily interactions. In the agora, you mingle with everyone, wealthy aristocrats discussing politics, stoic farmers selling their produce, diligent artisans displaying their crafts, and slaves carrying out their master's bidding. You learn to navigate these social strata with ease, adopting different manners of speech and conduct depending on who you're addressing. You might share a knowing glance with another merchant over the inflated claims of a seller, or politely defer to a distinguished citizen passing by. You are a chameleon, adapting to the diverse social landscape of the Greek city. Your wealth, if you were successful, also played a significant role. Money, even if not lauded in philosophical texts, certainly commanded respect. A wealthy merchant could commission public buildings, sponsor theatrical performances, or equip a trireme for the navy, all acts of liturgy that brought honor and prestige. These contributions allowed you to gain a degree of social acceptance and influence, blurring the lines between the noble citizen and the grubby merchant. Historians still debate the extent to which wealth alone could truly elevate a non-aristocratic individual to the highest echelons of ancient Greek society. with some arguing that old family lineage always retained a dominant social advantage. Your personal network was crucial, extending far beyond your immediate family. You built relationships with ship captains, port officials, craftsmen who supplied your goods, and other merchants both locally and in distant lands. These networks were based on trust, reciprocity, and mutual benefit. You might host foreign merchants in your home, offering hospitality zinnia in exchange for future favors or reliable information. These relationships were vital for navigating the often unstable world of ancient trade, providing a safety net in times of crisis. Imagine the merchant's home. If you were successful, it would be comfortable, perhaps even luxurious, adorned with goods from your travels, a finely woven carpet from Persia, an exquisite bronze statuette from Corinth, or a rare piece of Egyptian papyrus. Your family, if you had one, would benefit directly from your success, enjoying a lifestyle that few could afford. Your children might receive a good education, perhaps even learning rhetoric or philosophy, preparing them for a life beyond trade, or equipping them to take over the family business. However, life as a merchant also meant long periods away from home. Your family would grow accustomed to your absences, to the anxious waiting for news of your ship. Your wife would manage the household, and perhaps even some aspects of the local business, demonstrating a degree of independence rare for women in other societal roles. You'd rely on letters, carried by other travelers to maintain contact, though communication was slow and unreliable. You were also part of specific merchant guilds or associations, even if informal. These groups provided mutual support, shared information, and sometimes acted as collective bargaining units in negotiations with authorities. They offered a sense of camaraderie, a shared understanding of the unique challenges and rewards of your profession. You'd gather in taverns or specific sections of the agora, exchanging news, complaining about taxes, and celebrating successful ventures. There's a particular humor in commiserating with fellow merchants about the high price of dock fees or the unpredictable nature of the sea. Another storm, another prayer to Poseidon for my ship. You might quip, clinking amphorae of wine with a colleague. Despite the occasional condescension from the elite, you, the merchant, were a force of progress. You facilitated the exchange of goods, but also ideas, technologies, and cultural influences. You brought prosperity to your city, fueled its industries, and connected it to the wider world. You were a practical, pragmatic individual in a society that valued intellectual pursuits, yet your contributions were undeniably tangible and indispensable. You were the grease in the gears of the ancient Greek economy, ensuring its smooth, if sometimes creaky, operation. You've built your network, understood the social currents, and even dabbled in the legal system. But now, let's get to the heart of what drives every merchant, past or present, the inherent risks, rewards, and reputation that define your very existence. This isn't a safe, predictable life. It's a high-stakes gamble played against the backdrop of an untamed world, where a single turn of fortune can lead to ruin or unimaginable wealth. Let's begin with the risks, for they are many and ever-present. The most obvious, of course, is the sea itself. You've already experienced its unpredictable fury, the sudden squalls that whip up without warning, the monstrous waves that threaten to swallow your small ship whole, the hidden shoals that lie just beneath the surface, eager to tear a hole in your hull. A shipwreck wasn't just an inconvenience, it was often a death sentence for you, your crew, and certainly for your entire cargo. There were no search and rescue operations, no insurance companies to cover your losses. If your ship went down, everything you had invested, everything you had worked for, was gone in an instant. You'd hear tales of vessels simply disappearing, leaving no trace, swallowed by the vast, indifferent ocean, and a shiver would run down your spine. Then there are the human perils. Piracy remains a constant, terrifying threat. Imagine the knot in your stomach when you spot a suspicious sail on the horizon. Not a merchant vessel, but a sleek, fast warship, its oars churning, making directly for you. Do you flee? Do you fight? Most merchant ships were poorly armed, their crews ill-equipped for battle against hardened pirates. If captured, your cargo would be plundered, and you and your crew faced the grim prospect of enslavement, or worse, being thrown overboard to lighten the load or simply as a warning to others. The memory of a close call, of a pirate ship almost catching you before a sudden gust of wind allowed your escape, is etched into your mind. It makes every successful passage feel like a miracle. Beyond the sea, overland trade carried its own dangers. Banditry was rife, particularly in remote mountainous regions or along lonely stretches of road. A small caravan of mules laden with valuable goods was an inviting target. You'd hire armed guards, but even they could be overwhelmed by a larger, more organized gang. Unlike pirates, who might spare your life for ransom, bandits were often more brutal, leaving you stripped of your possessions and possibly your life. Disease was another silent killer. Long voyages, cramped conditions, poor sanitation, and unfamiliar food meant that sickness could sweep through a crew like wildfire. A debilitating fever could leave you incapacitated, unable to oversee your business, and potentially ruin a venture. The unsanitary conditions in many ports meant that even a brief stopover could expose you to deadly contagions. You'd see merchants return from voyages looking gaunt, their eyes hollow, sometimes never fully recovering. And then there's the economic risk. Markets could fluctuate wildly. A surplus of grain in one port, or a sudden lack of demand for your specialty pottery, could turn a promising venture into a crippling loss. Political instability, wars between city-states, sieges or changes in government, could instantly shut down trade routes, confiscate goods, or impose crippling new taxes. You might arrive in a port only to find it under blockade, or its population decimated by plague, rendering your cargo worthless. Scholars have long debated the precise impact of political instability on long-distance trade in the ancient world, with some arguing that merchants often found ways to circumvent conflicts, while others emphasize the profound disruptive effects. This constant uncertainty required nerves of steel and an ability to adapt quickly, but for every risk, there was the tantalizing promise of reward. And what rewards they could be: a successful voyage, where you acquired rare goods cheaply and sold them at a high profit, could transform your fortunes overnight. Imagine selling a shipment of exquisite Tyrian purple dye to a wealthy patron in Athens for a princely sum, far exceeding your wildest expectations. Or bringing back a critical supply of Black Sea grain during a famine, earning not only immense profit but also the gratitude of an entire city. These were the moments that fueled your ambition, that made all the risks seem worthwhile. The rewards weren't just financial. There was the thrill of discovery, of being one of the few to witness distant lands and cultures. You'd bring back not just goods, but stories, experiences, and a broader understanding of the world. You'd gain knowledge of different peoples, their customs, their languages, and their unique ways of life. This cultural enrichment, though intangible, was a profound personal reward, setting you apart from those who never ventured beyond their polis. And then there was the reward of reputation. This was perhaps your most valuable asset, more precious than any cargo of gold or silver. In a world without modern credit checks or extensive legal documentation, your word, your perceived honesty, and your reliability were everything. A good reputation meant you could secure loans more easily, find reliable trading partners, get preferential treatment in foreign ports, and attract the best captains and crews. People wanted to do business with someone they trusted, someone whose promises were as good as gold. Conversely, a bad reputation could be devastating. If you were known for cheating, for delivering shoddy goods, or for defaulting on debts, word would spread quickly through the tight-knit merchant communities. You would find doors closed to you, credit refused, and potential partners wary. Your livelihood would shrivel. In essence, your reputation was your credit score, your personal brand, and your professional license all rolled into one. You worked tirelessly to cultivate it, always striving for fair dealings, even if it meant a slightly smaller profit on a particular transaction. You'd perform small acts of kindness, offer fair prices, and always strive to deliver on your promises. If a shipment was delayed by a storm, you'd send word ahead if possible, and explain the situation honestly upon arrival. If goods were slightly damaged, you'd offer a fair reduction, rather than trying to hide it. These seemingly small actions built the foundation of a rock-solid reputation, and when you heard your name spoken with respect in a distant port, a quiet pride would swell within you. That, perhaps more than any single fortune, was the ultimate reward of a life truly lived as an ancient Greek merchant. It was a life of constant tension between the looming shadows of disaster and the glittering promise of success, a testament to resilience, shrewdness, and a healthy dose of good fortune. You faced the elements, navigated the markets, and built your reputation. Yet the life of an ancient Greek merchant wasn't solely defined by daring voyages and shrewd deals. It also had a quieter, often overlooked dimension, the merchant's home life. For all the exoticism and danger of your professional world, you were still, at heart, a man with ties to a specific polis, a family, and the comforts of domesticity. Imagine returning to your home in Athens after months at sea. The scent of salt and foreign lands gradually gives way to the familiar aromas of olive oil, baking bread, and the subtle fragrance of incense from the household altar. Your house, if you've been successful, is likely modest by aristocratic standards, but comfortable and functional. It's probably built around a central courtyard owl, providing light, air, and a degree of privacy from the bustling streets. The walls might be whitewashed, the floors simple beaten earth or stone, but perhaps adorned with a few prized rugs brought back from Anatolia or North Africa. The most profound experience of returning home is the reunion with your family. Your wife, the curia or mistress of the house, would have managed the household in your absence. This was no small feat. She would oversee the slaves if you had any, manage the household finances often with a remarkable degree of autonomy, and ensure the children were raised and educated. While Athenian women of citizen status typically had limited public roles, the wives of merchants often possessed a practical acumen born of necessity. She would be the anchor of your domestic world, ensuring stability while you navigated the instability of the seas. You might bring her a small gift from your travels, a piece of fine jewelry, a rare fabric, or an exotic spice, a tangible reminder of your perilous journeys and a testament to your affection. Your children, perhaps initially shy or overwhelmed by your return, would soon cling to you, eager for stories of distant lands and strange creatures. You'd spend precious moments recounting your adventures, the storms you weathered, the unusual goods you saw, perhaps exaggerating slightly for dramatic effect. These moments were not just entertainment, they were vital for bonding, for transmitting knowledge of the wider world, and perhaps for inspiring your sons to follow in your footsteps. Your daughters, though their futures were largely confined to the household, would also listen, gaining a broader perspective on the world beyond their immediate city walls. Educating your sons was a significant priority for a successful merchant. While aristocratic boys might focus on rhetoric and philosophy, your sons would learn practical skills reading, writing, mathematics for accounting, and perhaps even some basic navigation or knowledge of different commodities. You'd hope they would inherit your shrewdness, your resilience, and your eye for a good deal. They might accompany you to the agora, learning the ropes, observing negotiations, and understanding the rhythm of commerce from a young age. This hands-on apprenticeship was invaluable, far more practical than any formal schooling could provide for a future in trade. Your home would also serve as a hub for your local business dealings. While the agora was for public transactions, more intimate, high-stakes negotiations might take place in your andron, the men's dining room, where you could entertain business partners over wine and food. Here, away from the prying eyes and ears of the public, you could discuss confidential matters, forge alliances, and solidify complex agreements. The decor of this room might subtly showcase your success. Perhaps a few select pieces of the finest pottery you've acquired, or a particularly exquisite piece of furniture, the rhythm of your home life would contrast sharply with the unpredictability of your travels. Days would be more structured, focused on local business, household management, and civic duties. You might participate in local religious festivals, attend the assembly if you were a citizen, or simply spend time with friends and neighbors. These stable periods were essential for recharging, for reconnecting with the familiar, before the call of the open sea inevitably drew you away again. However, the merchant's life also meant perpetual anxiety for your family. Every departing ship carried with it the unspoken fear of never returning. Storms, pirates, and disease were ever-present dangers. Your wife would offer prayers and make offerings to the gods for your safe return, a silent vigil maintained in your absence. And when a ship arrived in port without you, or with news of a disaster, the heartache could be immense. Scholars still debate the psychological impact of long-distance maritime trade on ancient Greek families, particularly the unique stresses and adaptations required of the wives and children left behind. Socially, while perhaps not at the very top, you would find your place within a respected stratum of society. Your wealth and contribution to the city's economy would grant you a certain standing. You might be part of a Phratria brotherhood, attend symposia with other prosperous citizens, and engage in the vibrant intellectual and social life of your polis. You'd share a wry joke with fellow merchants about the price of goods or the latest pronouncements from the assembly, always with an eye to how it might impact trade. Did you hear the latest decree on tariffs, my friend? You might ask, a knowing twinkle in your eye. It seems Poseidon demands more than just libations these days. Yet, there was also the constant pull of the road, or rather, the sea. No matter how comfortable your home, no matter how beloved your family, the urge to explore, to discover new markets, to chase the next big profit was a powerful force. You were a wanderer by profession, forever balancing the desire for domestic tranquility with the irresistible call of distant horizons. Your home was your anchor, but the world was your oyster, and you, the ancient Greek merchant, were driven to seek out its treasures. This dual existence, navigating both the intimate confines of your home and the vast expanse of the Mediterranean, truly defined what it meant to live this challenging, yet ultimately rewarding, life. You've built your home, endured the social intricacies, and understood the constant interplay of risk and reward. But the ancient Greek world was not static. It was a dynamic crucible of ideas and challenges. As a merchant, you weren't just a passive player in this unfolding drama. You were an agent of innovation and adaptation, constantly finding clever solutions and evolving practices to thrive in a world that was always throwing new obstacles in your path. Imagine a sudden shift in political power. A new tyrant rises in a key trading city, imposing exorbitant taxes on foreign goods. Or perhaps a major war breaks out, disrupting established sea lanes and making voyages incredibly dangerous. What do? You don't simply abandon your profession. Instead, you adapt. You seek out alternative routes, perhaps longer and more arduous, but safer. You cultivate new contacts in neutral ports. You might even shift your focus to different commodities that are less affected by the conflict, like luxury items that can be smuggled more easily. Your survival depends on your flexibility, your ability to pivot and find new opportunities where others see only obstacles. Consider the challenges of shipbuilding. Your Holcas is sturdy, but it's still made of wood and relies on wind and oars. As trade routes lengthened and cargo volumes increased, there was constant pressure to improve vessel design. You, as a merchant, would be keenly interested in these innovations. A ship that could carry more cargo, or sail faster, or withstand rougher seas, directly impacted your profits. You might invest in newer, larger vessels, or even commission a ship to be built to your specifications, incorporating the latest design improvements. Perhaps a wider hull for greater capacity, or a stronger mast for larger sails. Historians still debate the specific evolution of merchant ship design in ancient Greece, with some suggesting a gradual, continuous refinement rather than sudden, revolutionary changes. Technological advancements, though slower than today, were crucial. The development of better anchors, more durable ropes, and improved tools for loading and unloading cargo all contributed to greater efficiency and safety. You, as a practical man of commerce, would embrace these innovations. Imagine the relief of having a stronger anchor that could hold your ship steady in a sudden squall, rather than dragging you towards a rocky shore. Or the simple efficiency of a newly designed winch that could load heavy amphorae with less manual labor, saving time and reducing the risk of breakage. One subtle but significant innovation was the gradual shift towards more standardized weights and measures. While local variations and fraud always existed, the increasing volume of interpolis trade created a demand for greater consistency. You, as a merchant who operated across different regions, would champion such standardization, as it simplified transactions and reduced disputes. You'd be among the first to adopt new, more reliable scales or measuring devices, as it enhanced your reputation for fair dealing. It's like moving from a world of everyone having their own foot measurements to everyone agreeing on a common meter. Revolutionary for efficient trade. Then there's the financial adaptation. As your ventures grew, the informal system of personal loans and simple barter sometimes became cumbersome. You'd witness and participate in the evolution of more sophisticated financial instruments, the trapezites. Those early bankers began to offer more than just simple loans. They might facilitate transfers of funds between different cities, or even offer rudimentary forms of credit or letters of exchange, reducing the need to transport large quantities of precious metals. Imagine the immense relief of being able to send funds to a distant port without physically carrying a heavy chest of silver, mitigating the risk of piracy or theft. This was a slow, organic development, driven by the practical needs of merchants like yourself. You also adapted to the specific demands of different markets. In one port, demand for raw materials might be high, while in another, it's luxury goods. You learn to read these nuances, to diversify your cargo, and to pivot your strategy based on market intelligence. You might cultivate specialized knowledge of a particular commodity, say, the intricate process of producing and dyeing textiles, allowing you to identify quality goods and negotiate better prices than a generalist merchant. This specialization was a form of innovation, carving out a niche in a competitive world. Even in something as basic as packaging, there was adaptation. Over time, amphorae designs evolved, becoming more standardized for specific goods, easier to stack, and more resistant to breakage during transport. You'd notice these changes, understanding that a well-designed amphora meant less loss and greater profit. You might even provide feedback to potters or coopers, requesting specific shapes or sizes to better suit your cargo needs. It's the ancient equivalent of optimizing shipping containers for maximum efficiency. Consider the human element of innovation. You, the merchant, were constantly learning. You absorbed new languages, new customs, new ways of doing business from the diverse peoples you encountered. You brought back not just goods, but ideas, a new technique for building a better pump, a more efficient way to irrigate fields, even a different style of art or architecture. You were a living conduit for the cross-pollination of cultures, inadvertently contributing to the intellectual and technological advancement of your own polis. A fascinating area of ongoing academic debate concerns the extent to which Greek merchants actively sought out foreign technologies and practices, or if such transfers were largely incidental. And finally, there was the ongoing adaptation to the challenges of human nature. You learned new ways to detect fraud, to negotiate with ruthless officials, and to manage a diverse, sometimes volatile crew. You developed a keen sense of observation, a shrewdness that went beyond mere calculation, allowing you to anticipate problems and navigate complex social dynamics. You became a master of improvisation, able to think on your feet when a storm hit, or a deal went sour. You might quip to a younger merchant, "The sea teaches you patience, my boy. But men teach you suspicion." A wry smile playing on your lips. In essence, the life of an ancient Greek merchant was a continuous exercise in problem solving and creative thinking. You were an innovator by necessity, constantly finding new ways to overcome obstacles, maximize profits, and navigate the ever changing landscape of the ancient world. This relentless pursuit of efficiency and opportunity not only secured your own livelihood but also laid the groundwork for future commercial expansion, proving that adaptability, above all else, was the true key to survival and success. You've journeyed through the turbulent seas, outwitted cunning traders, navigated legal complexities, sustained your family, and constantly innovated in the face of adversity. Now, as our journey nears its end, let's reflect on the profound legacy of the labyrinthine trader. The lasting impact you, the ancient Greek merchant, had on the development of civilization and the relentless flow of goods and ideas across the ancient world. Imagine looking back from your later years, perhaps retired from the active perils of the sea, content to manage your affairs from a comfortable home in Athens or a prosperous colony. You might observe the bustling port, the arrival of new ships laden with exotic cargo, and see the tangible results of your life's work and the work of thousands like you. The very existence of thriving Greek city-states, especially those like Athens, Corinth, or Miletus, was inextricably linked to the success of their merchants. Without your intrepid voyages, these cities would have remained small, isolated agricultural communities, starved of essential resources and vital connections to the wider world. Your most direct and obvious legacy is the economic interconnectedness you fostered. You transformed the Mediterranean from a collection of isolated pockets into a vibrant, interacting network. Grain from the Black Sea fed the hungry mouths of Athens. Timber from Macedon built their ships, and silver from Laurion funded their ambitions. In return, Athenian olive oil, wine, and pottery spread Greek culture and craftsmanship far and wide, influencing local tastes and economies in distant lands. You were the practical manifestation of globalization, albeit on an ancient scale, laying the groundwork for future empires built on trade. Beyond mere goods, you were a crucial conduit for the exchange of ideas and cultural practices. Every port you visited, every market you haggled in, every tavern you shared a drink in was a point of cultural cross-pollination. You brought back not just exotic spices, but also stories of different gods, different philosophies, different artistic styles. Phoenician writing systems likely influenced the Greek alphabet. Egyptian astronomical knowledge helped refine navigation. And Persian art forms found their way into Greek decorative motifs, often carried and disseminated by merchants. You, the merchant, were an unwitting yet powerful agent of cultural diffusion, blurring the lines between distinct civilizations. Consider the role you played in the development of knowledge and technology. The constant demands of maritime trade spurred innovations in shipbuilding, navigation, and even rudimentary cartography. You sought out the best shipwrights, demanded more accurate scales, and intuitively understood the benefits of better harbor infrastructure. Your practical needs drove a gradual, yet profound, advancement in applied sciences. While philosophers pondered the cosmos, you were building the practical tools that allowed humanity to traverse it. Scholars continue to debate the extent to which practical mercantile needs directly stimulated theoretical scientific advancements in ancient Greece, or if the two fields largely evolved independently. Your daily operations also contributed to the evolution of financial systems. The need to finance long and risky voyages, to manage credit and debt across vast distances, led to the development of more sophisticated banking practices by the Trapezites. Bills of exchange, partnerships, and rudimentary forms of maritime loans became more formalized, laying some of the very earliest groundwork for modern finance. You weren't just exchanging goods, you were, by necessity, helping to invent the tools of capitalism. Furthermore, you facilitated the growth of urban centers. Port cities flourished because of your tireless efforts. They became melting pots of cultures, drawing in people from across the Mediterranean, fostering innovation and dynamism. The wealth generated by trade allowed these cities to fund public works, build grand temples, and support their armies and navies. Piraeus, Athens' port, wasn't just a place to dock ships, it was a vibrant, self-sustaining city, a testament to the power of commerce. Even in politics, your presence was felt, while often excluded from the highest echelons of power. Wealthy merchants often wielded significant influence through their financial contributions to the state and their extensive networks. They provided intelligence, supplied crucial resources during wartime, and often served as diplomatic liaisons in foreign lands where they had established connections. You were a pragmatic voice in a world often dominated by idealistic rhetoric. Your legacy is also etched into the very language and common understanding of the time. Phrases, proverbs, and even myths would sometimes reflect the daily realities of trade, the risks and rewards of venturing forth. The cunning and resourcefulness required of a merchant became a recognized archetype, a testament to the enduring human spirit of enterprise. You, the merchant, became an unsung hero of progress, enabling the very fabric of the ancient Greek world to expand, flourish, and connect. So, as you reflect on your life, from that hopeful young man standing on the docks of Piraeus to the seasoned veteran overseeing your prosperous trade empire, you recognize your place in history. You were not a king, a general, or a philosopher, but you were a vital cog in the machine of civilization. You braved the unknown, connected disparate worlds, and laid the very foundation for the complex global economy that would one day emerge. Your labyrinthine journeys, fraught with danger and rich with opportunity, truly shaped the ancient world, one cargo at a time. All right. As the last echoes of our journey through ancient Greek commerce fade into the quiet of the night, it's time to gently bring our minds back to the present. You've navigated the treacherous waves, felt the grit of the agora, outwitted pirates, and experienced the profound weight of risk and reward that defined the lives of those incredible ancient merchants. Their world, so distant and yet so connected to our own, reminds us that human ingenuity, resilience, and the relentless drive to connect and exchange are truly timeless. Let the images of creaking ships and bustling harbors soften, dissolving into the peaceful darkness around you. The scent of salt and ancient dust gives way to the familiar comfort of your own space. Allow any lingering thoughts of tariffs and trade routes to gently drift away, replaced by a sense of calm and quiet reflection. The struggles and triumphs of those long-ago traders have now, for a time, become part of your own understanding, enriching your sense of history and the incredible tapestry of human endeavor. As your breath deepens and your body relaxes, know that the stories of the past are always here, waiting patiently to be explored again, whenever you seek a gentle escape into the depths of time. But for now, the journey is complete. Rest easy, knowing that another tale has unfolded, quietly, just for you.